Morphine, morphine, take 'em back to lemon trees beyond the beaten track. Morphine, steal into my papa's dream. Fighi freschi, vino puro, belli vesti, e lo cazzo duro. Morfina, aiutalo a suonare. Morphine, steal into my papa's dream. My father's grimace of pain meant it was time to snap my fingers and say, per favore, another shot of morphine, if you will. And the nurses, so gentile, were always pleased to oblige. The intensive care unit created a state of artificial limbo that must have been very scary for my father. He was certainly no fan of technology. After 40 years in Canada, 40 anni in Canada, Pa remained a Sicilian farmer, a farmer who well understood the old earth beneath his feet. But he had trouble relating to the new world before his eyes. Even the telephone, lo telephone, was an intrusive machine that truly bewildered him. Now, the telephone very rarely rang for him, but on the occasion when it did, we called out, "Pa, lo telephone, per te." Come, per me, ma sei sicuro che è per me? Are you sure it's for me? And we held the receiver out to him and said, "Sì, per te, vieni, piglialo, all'estate." Slowly and suspiciously, he made his way to the phone. Per me, it is. Come. Suddenly, he'd stop to make sure his fly was done up. A couple more steps, and he'd stop again, this time at a mirror to comb his hair. And if it was a long-distance call from Sicily, we almost had to restrain him from changing into a clean shirt. But for us, his 6 wild urban kids, technology is what the new world was all about. We worshipped any gadget we could afford. But there was no way, no way we expected our parents to understand when we told them that the kitchen radio wasn't enough. What we desperately needed was a hi-fi stereo with an automatic record changer. It was clear to us the only way we were ever going to get one was to buy it ourselves. Well, soon enough, we all got part-time jobs. And we started putting our money aside. And we bought a slick new 1959 Zenith hi-fi stereo from Eaton's. Whoa! Back in the days when a major appliance from Eaton's was as important as citizenship. And they delivered. And it was delivered while my father wasn't home. Oh, we also bought a stack of records, and were we ever anxious to make them last. And that evening, when my father walked through the door, he was almost blown back out to Bay Street by the loud, strange noise that greeted him. And he followed this noise into the living room. And there he set his stunned gaze upon his 6 kids, ranging in age from 5 to 15. We were completely possessed by demonic rock and roll as we gyrated and sang along with Elvis Presley. A rock and roll woman, your child of them blues. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. High five. A rock and roll woman, your child of them blues. Oh, perché sta batteria, eh? Perché sta buttana batteria? Why this noise? He shifted his gaze from us to the enormous hi-fi stereo console that dominated the tiny living room space, and his questions continued. Ma che sta cosa, eh? Kulakata, Kuvu, Richimelo Kuvu, who did it? But in this instance, Kuvu meant much more than simply who did it. It meant, what is it? Who bought it? How are we going to pay for it? And especially, how are we going to hide it from the welfare lady? The Snoopy welfare lady. My oldest brother, Salvatore, or Sam as he was called, tried to calm him. Pa, calmate. Tried to convince Pa that the welfare lady would never see it, because with the lid closed, we could cover it up with an old cloth, and on top of that, we could put the knickknacks that Ma buys at the Zellers, Luzzello. And then we can fish around the house for all those statues of saints lying all over the place. Teka, San Francesco lo mendemo qua, Santa Lucia lo mendemo druoco, e Sant'Antonio lo mendemo qua. And the welfare lady will think it's just an old cheap piece of furniture. With his usual cautious step, Bob walked up to the hi-fi stereo. and he dunked his head into the open well where the mechanism gleamed up at him. And he fixed his eyes on the turntable and became mesmerized. Ma come girava, e girava, e girava. The needle had come to the end of the Elvis Presley record, and Pa continued to stare, dumbfounded, as the arm automatically lifted off the record and shifted horizontally. And then it rose again to the level of the stack of records above the turntable and again shifted horizontally until it tapped the bottom record in the stack, causing it to fall exactly over top the last spinning record. And then, with 1959 robotic precision, that needle made a pinpoint landing at the beginning of the next record. Maria, Maria. And we marveled at Pa's transfixed state, wondering what his reaction was going to be when he heard this next record. Because we bought it especially for Pa. That was a tarantella. And that tarantella made my father's face light up with a big smile as he bowed his head deeper into the well, almost touching the mechanism with his nose. And addressing the turntable, he said, "Thank you. Thank you very much." And we found this funny because for us, this marked the point where Pa had gone beyond simply being a foreigner, way beyond. From now on, he was Pa, the extraterrestrial. The hospital room assigned for our family meeting was much too small for a Sicilian family meeting, because everyone came. Aunts, uncles, cousins, nephews, nieces, grandchildren, kumpare, paesane, oh! Uncle Vincenzo complained that there wasn't even a table big enough to accommodate the 4 large slabs of rectangular pizza that he brought to feed everyone. Oh, manco tavolo c'è Indra. E come fare? Non mi mentre. Oh, I'm the way. E kids, too many kids. No run, no run. What's the matter? You crazy? A che mi pare armadio e senza tavolo. Manco tavolo. Manco seggio c'è. E come a mentre. He ended up by sitting with the pizza in his lap, and he pulled out his pocket knife, and he cut out slices. And he handed the pizza out first to the children, saying, take, eh? This is typical Sicilian pizza. Oh, it's just like us. Typical Sicilians, eh? Very simple, eh? And very thick. Thick. Mi capisci che sei very thick? Tu e tuo frate no run, oh. And the room soon got hot and noisy, and my mother's sharp voice parted the cacophony like it was the Red Sea. Ma che sono pazzi che qua? Prima li tagliano tutti i guerrieri come fosse un maiale, e poi lo mettono in capo queste macchine per fare vivere come un cavolo, un cappuccio. What are they, crazy around here? First they cut out all of his guts as if he were a butchered pig. Then they put him on these machines to live like a head of cabbage. Hey, and I'll tell you something else, added my brother Joe. Pretty soon they're going to get fed up with him being in the fucking machines, and they're going to want to pull the goddamn plug. And then my brother Tony. Everyone knows what assholes they are. To them, Pa's just an old nobody who's already lived too long. They'll kill him off. They'll kill him off as fast as they can just to save a couple of stinking bucks. That's all they care about anymore, is a couple of stinking bucks. And then my 87-year-old Pietro, Uncle Pete, 87 years old, the family patriarch, the first one to come to Canada back in the 30s and sponsored all of our arrival here. And he had to fight to get a word in edgewise. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. Oh, I got a speaker now. I speak. Oh, in English, yeah. For the people who don't understand the Siciliano. There's no difference if they pull out the plug or they leave the plug. Eat. Sing. Shit. For me, it's dead anyway. Oh, it's dead anyway. And then my oldest brother, Sam again, turned to me and said, "Hey, Cha, you went to school. You ought to know how these hospital assholes think. Tell us what the hell is going on." I had to be very careful about how I handled my big brother Sam. It was dangerous to show too much compassion for the hospital point of view. And it didn't help that Uncle Vincenzo still had out that pocket knife. Their grape-stomping eyes peered deep into my Sicilian soul. And I was just about to give Sam some sort of a response when they shushed me. Shut up. Oh, shut up. O dottore c'è. The doctor is coming. O dottore. O dottore. He turned down Uncle Vincenzo's offer of a slice of pizza. No, thank you. Mistake number one. He strutted directly to the front of the room, and he announced that he wished to speak only to the family. And he asked all those who were not members of the immediate family to please leave the room. And nobody budged. Cousin Rosa stepped up to him and said, "Doctor, what's the matter you, huh? You know, got eyes, you know, see? Everybody, she's a family." And then he tried to get everyone to quiet down. And that was mistake number two. They made more noise trying to quiet each other down than they were making before. Shut your damn mouth, man. You're the one who's doing all the... Fallo parlare a Igi che c'è un dottore in gioco. Who's that? It's a doctor. A doctor. One minute, dottore. Fare parlare al dottore o no? Tu shut up. Tuo frate shut up, vediamo. Ok, shut up. Dottore, speak. Speak. Aspetta. Dottore, speak. 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 The voices eventually quieted down. But nothing could silence the lip-smacking sounds of pizza chewing. The doctor carried on about the nature of the surgery, the poor prognosis of Mr. Chiarelli living much longer, general hospital policy, and responsibilities with respect to the life support system. And he left us with the final comment that the decision of how long to leave Mr. Chiarelli on the life support system was ultimately up to us. Tocca a Nandri, la famiglia. And once that doctor was gone, my mother spoke. She said, "Ora questo dottore aveva una faccia stupido." Now this doctor has a stupid face. Strana lingua inglese, non capisci, zero tagliato. Strana lingua inglese, non capisci, zero tagliato. Sicilia lontano e mangi il pane scordato. Strange English words got my papa's tongue in a spin. Strange English words got my mama's tongue in a spin. Forsaken Sicily, still under their skin. Straniero blues. Straniero blues. Arrangiarsi in Canada. Getting used to Canada. Arrangiarsi in Canada. Straniero blues. Bringing them old country ways to Ontario. Bringing them old country ways to Ontario. Oh. Mediterranean dreams and shoveling snow. When my mother said, "That doctor has a stupid face," that was a serious comment. Nobody in the family doubted my mother's ability to read faces. My ma, Salvatrice Chiarelli, may not have been able to read words, but boy, could she read faces. It was a scary talent, but it came in very handy when going to the market. She knew just what face to buy from to get a good deal. No. La sanzizza non si cata, gioco di idio sempre con lo mosso così. Catalo chi giandro, chi giù con la testa che sappia ascondare. Buy the sausages from the one with the head that knows how to listen. E lo tomato catalo gioco della femmina con gli occhi simpatici. And buy the cheese from the woman with the sympathetic eyes. The greatest demonstration of my mother's face-reading ability came one Saturday morning when I was 9 years old. It was time for the weekly pilgrimage to the A&P supermarket, which my mother called l'U&B. And my younger brother Joe and I got up early to make sure we went along, not because we were good boys and liked to help carry those damn grocery bags, but because we heard at the school ground at St. Mary's that there was a free water pistol inside the Kellogg's cornflakes box, which my mother called le cornflesso. And the only way to make sure Ma picked up the right box was to be there. Now, shopping at the A&P was very exciting for me and my younger brother Joe, because on the shelves, we saw all the wonderful food advertised on television that never made it into our house, like Lou Jello and Betty Crocker cake mix and instant mashed potatoes and cookies and little boxes of raisins. Only the staples made it into our grocery cart. And thanks to a little whining, Ma, so did the cornflesso with the tss-tss water pistol inside. Well, it was time to head for the checkout counter when Ma stopped abruptly in her tracks. And in shock and in horror, she said, La mia borsa. Non è la mia borsa. My purse. Where's my purse? Who took it? Joe and I looked at each other and shrugged. And I said, Mangusaccio, Ma. I don't know, Ma. Ma era qua. Era proprio qua. Quello pigliato. Who did it? She looked up to find several faces staring at her. So she stared right back with that menacing Sicilian look we call l'umalocchio, the evil eye. Joe and I were supremely relieved that for a change, the look wasn't directed at us. Satisfied that the faces around her looked innocent enough, she jerked her head down to us and said, Vieni con me, come with me. And she pushed that grocery cart up and down the aisles. She was a woman on a life and death mission. As if in a trance, she studied each and every single face that she passed. And suddenly, she blocked the passage of a large woman whose grocery cart was full of junk food, and she had a cigarette dangling down the side of her mouth. And Ma locked eyes with that woman and said, Yo, mia borsa. And the woman said, Get out of my way, you stupid wop. Can't understand a damn word you're saying. Get the hell out of my way. And Ma hung on to that woman's cart and took a step closer and said, You got a mia borsa. And the woman said, DP Dago, get the hell out of my way. I'm going to call the police. And at that point, I lightly touched my mother's arm and I said, Ma, sta femmina vuole chiamare la polizia. Forse sbagli. Ammonini. This woman wants to call the police. You could be making a mistake. Let's go. And my mother's focus did not waver. Her right hand bolted forward and dove deep into the woman's large open burlap bag. And like a magician, she pulled out her purse, clutched it to her bosom, and with tears in her eyes, she said, Cornuta vigliacca, mia borsa. You cuckolded bitch, my purse. And I'd never seen a grocery cart move so fast as that woman hightailed out of there. Joe and I stood paralyzed. We stared at Ma in absolute awe. And from that day on, whenever my mother said something like, that doctor has a stupid face, we made sure we got a second opinion. But unfortunately for Ma, respect for her face-reading ability did not stop us from poking fun at her inability to speak English. Like when we were sitting on a veranda on a hot and lazy summer afternoon in Hamilton. Maria, che calore che c'è qua. Oh, hot. E che paese è questo? Nell'inverno si muore dello freddo, and in stagione si muore dello caldo. What kind of country is this? In the summer you die of the heat, and in the winter you die of the cold. Oh, come a mentre nella veranda. Oh, si può pigliare tante aria. We spotted my good friend Val Turluk coming toward us from a couple of blocks away. Now, Val was a Ukrainian kid, and he had the unique distinction of being one of the few non-Sicilians in a neighborhood that had 10,000 Sicilians, and all of them from the exact same town of Racalmuto. And back in Racalmuto, there were only 8,000 Racalmutese left behind. So naturally, we taught Val some choice Sicilian words and phrases, and of course, gestures like Vavangul and Le corni a terra, and that ever so delicate, elegant, and graceful gesture of Ecco, But none of this language was fit for greeting my ma. So naturally, Val addressed my mother in English. And Ma really liked Val. She especially liked the polite way he always greeted her by saying, "Hello, Mrs. Chiarelli. It's nice to see you. How are you today?" Now, Ma couldn't understand un tubo of what he was saying, but she liked the way it sounded. So polite, so friendly, like something she'd heard on television, like the way Eddie Haskell always greeted Mrs. Cleaver. "Hello, Mrs. Cleaver. It's nice to see you. Is Wally home? Is the beaver home?" Val created one of those rare moments that made my mother feel like an Americana. Eh? Toronto, Hamilton, California, Coca-Cola, America. And that summer afternoon, my mother surprised me by asking me to teach her a polite and appropriate response to Val's friendly greeting. And my young, devious brain went into high gear, and I said, "Sì, Ma, questo lo potremmo fare. We could do this, Ma. Dai, prova questo. Try this. Pronto? You ready? Go wash your bum." "Come. Give me this," she said. "Go wash your bum. Go wash your bum." And as Val got closer and closer, my mother practiced it to herself. "Go wash your bum." And Val climbed up the veranda steps, went directly to Ma, and predictably he said, "Hello, Mrs. Chiarelli. It's nice to see you. How are you today?" And my mother's face tensed up with concentration. She said, "Hello, Belly. You nice boy. Go wash your bum." And her face broke out into her wonderful piano smile. We called it her piano smile because she had a tooth here, black space there, tooth here, black space there. And she turned this sunshine smile to her loving son for approval, of course. And Val also turned to me and said, "Charlie, you're a real stronzo." Stronzo, he calls me. It means shithead. I teach him one of the most powerful words in Italian vocabulary, and he throws it in my face in front of my mother. Val should have had a little more respect. I might have been a stronzo, but I wasn't just a stronzo. I was the official household translator, yeah. That was an honor given to the family member with a gift for the gab.